y'all, welcome and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and here we do all things spooky, whether that is me reading scary stories that you guys have sent in to me like we're doing today, or that is me retelling my own paranormal encounters, talking about scary books, scary movies, scary TikToks I've found. It's a good time if I do say so myself, and if that sounds cool, I would love to have you here. I post every single day. Monday through Friday is literally nothing but scary stories that you guys send in to me, and Saturday and Sunday we alternate between the other stuff that I mentioned. So please check out the description below for where to send in your stories, and also my other social media links and podcast episodes are there. So that is your lifeline. Please check that out, but without further ado, let's get into these stories. So the first one comes from a really good friend of mine on TikTok. He makes scary paranormal content based in like the Smoky Mountains. So he's had quite a few creepy experiences himself, and this is one of those. I've actually read one of his on here before. It's terrifying. This one is also terrifying, and it is about a very peculiar house in Tennessee. Hey Morgan, it's Dustin again, and I don't even know where to start with this one. I just remembered this encounter the other night, and I had to tell you. It was a few years ago, right as COVID cases started to soar, and I was working at a grocery store. I worked there with my friends Josh and his girlfriend Trinity. We would try to plan things on our days off together so we could hang out. I should have ignored the text. If I had, none of this would have happened. It was 2 days before my day off, and I remember waking up to the buzz of my phone vibrating against my nightstand. I squinted at the screen, still half asleep. Josh, you off Thursday? Me, yeah. Why? Josh, don't make any plans. Me and Trinity have a surprise. That was it. No context, no details, just a cryptic message that immediately had me curious. I should have known better. Josh was always dragging me into weird shit. Urban exploring, sneaking into places we weren't supposed to be, testing out all those haunted legends people whispered about. Half of the time it was just abandoned buildings and graffiti-covered tunnels. Nothing ever really happened, but to be honest, I left it all. But something about that message stuck with me. Maybe it was the way he worded it. A surprise. Like it was something special. I texted back asking what it was about, but all I got was, just trust me, pick you up at 7. I should have said no. I should have told him I had plans even if it was a lie. Because now, after what happened, I keep thinking, Josh didn't find that place. It found us. I had decided to vlog that day for YouTube, so we went to Sevierville and grabbed some food. Then as the sun sank behind those mountains, we headed to the old house on Sulphur Springs Road. You might have heard of it. The one everyone says is cursed. The one with all the stories about people going missing. Apparently, it was a small makeshift hospital during the tuberculosis outbreak in 1954. I've heard about it for years, but never actually thought any of that paranormal stuff was real. But it is. It's real, and I wish I'd never gone there. This house sat deep in the woods, way off the main road. It's huge, way bigger than I expected, like some kind of decaying mansion swallowed up by the forest. 3 stories, tall, dark, and rotting, with thick ivy creeping up the sides like the earth was trying to pull it back to hell. The windows were shattered, gaping like black mouths. The front porch sagged like it was on the verge of collapse, and the whole place smelled like damp wood, rust, and something rotting. Josh was the one who pushed the door open. It barely took any force. The hinges let out this awful screech like the house itself was screaming. Inside, the air was sinful. Thick, heavy. It was cold, but not in a normal way. More like the cold was inside of you. There was furniture left behind, but it was unsuitable. A rocking chair in the corner, rocking on its own, just like in the movies. Clearly the gust of wind from the door opening was the cause, but that didn't make it any less creepy. A long dining table with plates still sitting there, covered in dust, like whoever lived here left in the middle of the meal and never came back. But the worst part? The portraits. Lining the hallway were these old, cracked paintings. Portraits of people whose eyes followed you no matter where you stood. Their faces faded, but I could still make them out. One of them was a woman in a white dress. We didn't stay long. Trinity was freaked out from the second we walked in. We shouldn't be here, she kept saying, rubbing her arms like she was freezing. Even Josh wasn't cracking jokes anymore, so we left. But as soon as we stepped outside, I felt it, that pressure that grows on the back of your neck, the one that everyone knows but tries to ignore, like we were being watched. I turned back to scan the house one more time, and that's when I saw her. She was standing in the upstairs window looking down at us. She was wearing a white Victorian-style dress, yellowed with age. The lace was ripped, fabric hanging off of her like it had once been elegant, but it was now tattered. Her hair was long, gray, and tangled. It framed her face in limp strands, her skin pale, almost cracked. Her lips bleeding and split open. At first, I thought they had been stitched shut, and the bleeding was from the threads being ripped out. But then she smiled, and I saw her teeth. Too many of them. Rows of them. Her mouth stretched wider than it should have, like her jaw could unhinge and she could swallow something whole. I grabbed Josh's arm, my chest tight with panic. Do you see her? Trinity was the first to react, and she screamed, grabbing onto Josh like she was about to collapse. Her nails dug into his arm, and that's when the woman moved. She tilted her head, her smile growing, and then she raised a hand. She waved at us. She freaking waved at us. But it wasn't a normal wave. It was slow, unnatural, like her bones barely worked, like she was inviting us back inside. She almost floated away from the window and in the direction of the stairs leading down to the front door, and that's when we ran. We tore through those trees, branches slapping at our face, our feet mumbling over roots. I could feel her watching us, like her eyes were digging into my back. Then Trinity fell. Josh and I stopped and turned to help her up, and we looked back towards the house to see if the woman was following us. The house was gone. Clearing's still there, the tree still bent like something used to be there, but the house itself, it just wasn't. Then Josh's car alarm went off. All doors open. We didn't even shut the doors. We just jumped in and floored it, tires skidding against the dirt. Josh didn't stop driving until we were miles away, and Trinity wouldn't stop crying. I couldn't stop crying. Josh and Trinity won't talk about it. Did we all have a shared hallucination? Maybe some sort of delusional moment? Some sort of echo from the past from all the despair from that house? I know what we saw, and I know the terror we felt. But the worst part? When I got home, when I finally made it to my room, I saw something. A piece of fabric, a shred of white lace, sitting in the middle of my floor. I don't know how, but I think she followed me home. That's a strong start. Whoa! Dustin is the best writer. Honestly, if he would just write me a story a week, I would be thrilled. I do need to remind myself to look into that house because I've never actually heard of it and I want to research it because, oh my God. All right, next story. Hi, Morgan and Pete. PT, you want to come say hello? She's like, no, I'm laying on the couch, bro. I'm from Cape Town, but my family is from the countryside. Story number 1. I've had a shadow figure follow me around since I was very young. I'm pretty sure it's just a guardian because he only shows up when I'm not doing well mentally. I've only ever seen him at my dad's place, one of the many places I'm never happy. Second story. I'm pretty sure I'm also some sort of medium or something because I've had dreams where family members who have long been passed visited me. My great-grandmother also visited me once at night when I was wide awake and told me that my grandmother didn't have long. Sure enough, 2 months later, she was gone. Story number 3. South Africa in general is pretty haunted. There are all kinds of cryptids that I've seen, including walkers. I only saw them twice. The most recent one was on my way to school. There was some sort of bridge over the highway for pedestrians to walk over, and the gates are about the height of an average person. Anyway, I saw this thing walk over the bridge, but it was twice the height of the gate. My mother saw it too. Story 4. A bit wholesome, but my great-grandfather visited me on my birthday and said happy birthday and made our kitchen lights flash. Story number 5. One of my old friend's houses is haunted, and a lot has happened in that house. Whenever we hung out there, we would both always see shadow figures moving around and watching us. She told me the living room was the most haunted, so like a stupid teenager I said, okay, bet, and walked into that room and was immediately attacked. I couldn't breathe. I felt feverish, lightheaded, and on edge. I'm 100% convinced that spirit is a manifestation of trauma as the whole family is extremely toxic. Sorry this is so long, but this is the last story. It's not long. You're good. Guys, write me long stories. Never apologize. Everyone who went to my primary school knows it's haunted. But despite knowing that, I signed up to be a scholar patrol at my school. That's the people who help kids cross the street and control the traffic in school zones. We had to be at school really early, like at 5:30. One morning while the power was out during a storm, like every horror movie I know, I went to get our equipment that was in the little shed in the hall. For some stupid reason, my 12-year-old self decided to walk down the dark hallway alone. At the end of the hall, I could see someone peeking out and staring at me, even though I knew everyone at the school was outside. This thing and I stared at each other, and it went on for what felt like hours until my cousin came to check on me. When I looked back, it was gone, and he didn't see anything. Those are terrifying. Some of them are wholesome, but terrifying too. Oh my God. All right, next story. I have a few stories to tell you, and I sent you one but forgot to give the backstory. The house that my family lived in was owned by the father of a friend of the family. He passed away in the attic. The son took guitar spikes and nailed the attic door shut so us kids couldn't go up there for a few reasons. 1, because it was unfinished. 2, because his dad died up there, and there was a few days before that he found him. Anyway, the old man did not care for me at all. I was the only one he ever messed with. I could hear him clumping down the attic stairs and open the door, and he would open the bedroom door all the time. He would come in the bathroom when I was showering and touch me or pull my hair. One night he came out of my closet and looked down at me as I was laying in bed and told me that this is my house. Get the hell out of my house. I called my grandparents the next day and we moved out. When my mother moved out of the house, my aunt took over the house and made his pre-bindus presence known again. Clattering around in the kitchen, opening doors, cabinets, and drawers. My aunt told him if he was going to make all that noise, then he needed to go on to the next life because she was over it. She already had 4 children that made enough noise and messes. He either decided to stay in the attic or moved on because he didn't mess with her after that. Here's another story for you. My granddad passed away in 1991, and my grandma would wake up in the middle of the night calling for my uncle. I would wake up and go in her room and ask her what's wrong. She would say, "Go get your uncle, buddy. Tell him that his dad wants to talk to him." I would tell her that granddad was gone, and she would tell me that he was laying next to her in the bed and that he wanted to talk to my uncle. I would go in and wake him up and tell him that grandma wanted him. I was terrified that he would show himself to me. I was having horrible nightmares of him laying on the floor under a sheet. He would sit up and ask me why I didn't die for him. That he would have died for me if I had asked him to. I went and stayed with my aunt after the funeral, and when they delivered his ashes to my grandma, he must have fallen me because things started happening. My granddad was a double amputee and his legs were at my aunt's. She would put them in the basement because they freaked me out. Every morning they would be sitting next to the basement door. My aunt would say, "Haha, Dad, very funny." We were watching a movie one night and the microwave was beeping like someone was setting the timer. Then it would start and stop after a minute, and then the smell of coffee would come wafting in the front room. We would go in the kitchen and there would be a cup of coffee in the microwave. Late at night there was banging on the front door and my Uncle Dave would get up to answer the door. He told my aunt that my granddad was at the door and he wanted to talk to her. I thought I was going crazy. Then the phone in the room that wasn't plugged in started ringing and my Uncle Dave answered it and said that it was granddad. The next time was right after the graduation from college. He came on a gurney and told her that he was proud of her and that he could rest now. Thanks for reading. Oh, that's terrifying. Oh my God. All right, let's read one more story. I have no idea if you've received any emails from Bulgaria, but here comes a long one. Sorry about that. A few years back, I used to share a bunk bed with my younger brother. I always slept on the top bunk, but this time me and my brother got in a fight and he got to sleep on the top bunk. I've always been scared of that room, and ever since then I've been scared of the dark too. I remember I had a horrible nightmare that something paranormal I experienced when I was even younger. The apartment complex that I live in has garages for every complex, and above them a shared basement of sorts where my grandma still lives. The door to the basement is right at the center of the basement corridor where all the rooms are. You could either go left, where at the bottom of the hallway there's a door that opened inwards, or right, where across that door is my grandma's door. There are 2 light switches for either side, and I have always turned on the lights from my grandma's side and immediately looked behind me to the other side of the hallway that's only being illuminated by the right side light, the slight light from the open door to the basement. It still looks dark, but you can see all the doors. It felt different this day. I done the same thing, turned the lights on, looked behind me, bolt. But before I could bolt down the hallway, I see someone or something. The third picture is how I saw it, from the left side of the hallway. I saw a shadow. It was very tall, and it moved from the center of the middle door swiftly to the inward left door and went through it. Fight or flight kicked in, and I froze for a second. When I realized what I saw, I bolted as fast as I could to see my grandma's apartment. I told her everything that I saw, and she saged me thoroughly. This nightmare I had was similar. I saw the figure, but this time I could run. I ran fast, and I got to my grandma's door and went to open it. I walked right through it on the other side and saw a figure, but this time I could see it clearly. It was levitating, and its face was distorted, like it was static on a TV. I started screaming and woke myself up. I saw the same figure standing next to the bottom bunk of the bed when I was sleeping in. It knelt down so that I could see it again, and I yelled for my mom as loud as I could. My brother jumped down from his bed, and the figure disappeared into nothing. My mom burst in the room and started questioning me. I told them what happened, but they laughed it off and said I had a high fever. I did have a fever, but I know what I saw because I've seen it ever since. My grandma then saged me and told me stories about it, too. I think it's been following my family for a while, but how do I deal with it? There's also a forest behind my apartment complex, and I've heard lots of stories about missing people and weird stuff from it. I live in a small town in southwestern Bulgaria, so I doubt any killers are on the loose. Thank you so much for reading. I have more stories if you would like to share them. Yes. Okay. So, that's really creepy. I would like to look up the folklore of Bulgaria, but it sounds like you may need to definitely ignore it, but I would set up some protections on you as far as in the building itself as well. That is terrifying. Yeah, I would really like to look into the folklore of that, but for now, ignore it, set up protections. Cleanse, obviously, too. All right, that is all for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time.